Kibera is a humble African village located amidst vast savannas. Every morning, the village market overflows with colorful fruits, handmade jewelry, and the villagers' daily needs. But this morning, there was unusual activity in the marketplace. Instead of their usual hair braiders, the women of the village flocked to a silent stranger sitting in one corner of the market. The woman's name was Wema. She had a serious and calm demeanor, with deep black eyes that avoided contact with anyone, even in the crowded market. It was as if an invisible curtain surrounded her. No one wanted to get too close, only lining up to have their hair braided. Wema's arrival had sparked great curiosity and unrest among the other hair braiders in the village. A young hair braider named Zuri was particularly troubled by Wema's sudden and mysterious popularity. Zuri, known for her hair adorned with brightly colored beads and graceful hands, was one of the best hair braiders in the village. But now, her customers were going one by one to Wema. As Zuri watched Wema create beautiful braids in silence, an indescribable jealousy overtook her. Zuri felt a new drive and curiosity that compelled her to find out who Wema really was. Once the crowd in the market thinned out, Zuri began to observe Wema more closely. Wema's hands seemed to braid hair with a magical touch. No one could talk to her because Wema did not utter a single word, focusing only on her work. Zuri felt that there was something behind Wema's strange behavior. One evening, after the market closed, Zuri decided to quietly follow Wema. For the first time in her life, she was taking such a risk, but she knew she wouldn't find peace until she found answers to her questions. Walking silently in the shadows, she followed Wema to a wooded area. Suddenly, Wema vanished. As Zuri looked around in confusion, she heard a voice behind her. "Why are you following me?" Zuri's heart raced. When she looked back, she saw no one. The darkness was about to swallow Zuri, leaving her with no choice but to run. Ignoring the voice, she quickly returned to her tiny hut in the village and pondered what had happened. She knew she couldn't tell anyone about it, thinking it was impossible to explain Wema's presence. The next day, Zuri's thoughts about what she had seen and heard grew even more complex. She began to question what kind of being Wema was and why she was so silent. At that time, she met Amina, who had recently moved to the village. Amina said she could help Zuri deal with this dark secret. Zuri accepted Amina's help, and together, they decided to uncover Wema's mystery. In the village of Kibera, peace and happiness had been replaced by curiosity and anxiety. Wema's arrival had changed something in the village, but no one knew exactly what. Zuri and Amina were about to embark on a great adventure to discover the truth behind Wema's mysterious presence. Amina had settled into the village and was getting used to her daily routine. However, it was impossible not to feel the strange tension in the village. Silence and peace had given way to a mysterious unease. While Wema continued to braid the women's hair, news began to spread about villagers who frequently fell ill, had misfortunes at work, or argued with their families. One evening, Amina went to the market and saw Wema's stall. Curious, she merged into the crowd and joined the long line. As the night breeze swept down Amina's neck, the market's lights created a dim atmosphere. As she approached Wema's stall, her sense of unease grew, but there was also an attraction in this unease. It was as if something was keeping Amina there, compelling her to uncover a secret. When it was finally her turn, Wema's cold yet skillful hands touched her hair. Amina seemed to fall into a hypnotic state under Wema's silky and quick movements. As Wema silently worked, Amina began to fall into a deep sleep. When she awoke, she found herself trapped in a cage in a dark forest. Braids woven by Wema's hands were coiled around the cage. Other cages held women Amina recognized from the village. Dark figures approached from all sides, seemingly preparing to torture the captives. Amina's heart pounded, but her body couldn't move. When she suddenly woke up, she was met with Wema's cold gaze. At that moment, Amina was sure that Wema was not just a skilled braider, but a dark entity targeting the village. However, the other women around her seemed to be indifferent to her sudden startle. Amina knew she couldn't stay there any longer and quickly left the stall. The next day, she met with Zuri, eagerly awaiting her stories. When she heard about Amina's experiences, Zuri was horrified. She then told Amina about the night she followed Wema and the creepy voice behind her. Both were incredulous at each other's stories, yet they couldn't find another explanation. When the market reopened that day, women were once again lining up for Wema's braiding. But Amina noticed small changes on the faces of the waiting women. Most had dark circles under their eyes and lines of sadness and hopelessness on their faces. These women seemed to be affected by Wema's cursed touch. Amina told Zuri they needed to visit the village elder, Nawazi. Initially hesitant, Zuri agreed to go to Nawazi at Amina's insistence. Together, they set off for Nawazi's house. Nawazi's house sat deep in the forest, on the slope of a hill. It was surrounded by ancient exotic plants and magical symbols. When they knocked on the door, a deep and wise voice invited them in. Nawazi was an old but powerful woman. Her eyes reflected the wisdom of years and the strength of nature. Nawazi listened carefully to Amina and Zuri's stories, then took a deep breath. Wema is not just a hair braider, Nawazi said. She is a malevolent spirit that has cursed many villages in the past. The comb is a tool she uses to spread her curse. To break this curse, you must find the first person she cursed and perform a special ritual to undo their braids. Amina and Zuri knew the task would be challenging, but they were determined to do whatever it took to save their village. Their first step was to find Wema's first customer, which meant talking to everyone in the village. The next day, Zuri and Amina returned to the market with a new mission, more determined and conscious. They knew the journey they had started would change not only their own lives, but the fate of the entire village. After hearing Nawazi's words, Amina and Zuri were filled with both fear and hope. To break Wema's curse, their first step was to find the first victim in the village, Wema's first customer. So, they immediately began their search the following day. They decided to talk to everyone in the small village. While Amina spoke to the women gathering at the well, Zuri questioned her neighbors and co-workers in the market. At first, no one wanted to acknowledge that Wema was cursed, but eventually, some began to listen to their experiences and realized they had experienced the same things. At noon, with the market filled with chatter, Amina and Zuri pursued one of Wema's first customers. Her name was Kendi, and everyone had sad stories to tell about her. Kendi lived alone in a small hut at the end of the market. When they arrived at her house, they knocked on the door, and a tired, thin woman barely opened it. Seeing Amina and Zuri, Kendi was surprised, but invited them in. There was an eerie calmness in Kendi's house, mixed with a sense of intense hopelessness. Inside, it was dark and cold. Kendi sat on the ground with her hands neatly folded between her knees, staring at a fixed point. "Can you tell us what you've been through recently?" Amina asked gently. Kendi took a deep breath, and tears welled up in her eyes before she began. The day Wema first arrived in the village, I wanted to have her braid my hair. When I sat down beside her, I saw her extraordinary skills, but suddenly I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up, everything had gone wrong. My children got sick, my work failed, and my husband left me. Everyone around me distanced themselves. Now, I'm a lonely person in this village who believes I'm cursed. Amina and Zuri looked at each other with concern and determination in their eyes. Kendi's story confirmed what Nawazi had told them. Amina extended her hands to Kendi. "We'll help you," she said. "We must break Wema's curse." Kendi smiled gratefully, but doubtfully. "Is there really hope?" she asked. Amina's determination was evident in her eyes. "Yes. If we complete the ritual correctly, This curse can be broken, as Nolwazi said. Zuri turned to Kendi, saying, "We need to go to Nolwazi's house for the ritual. We have to prepare." After a moment of hesitation, Kendi nodded in agreement. Together, they set off for Nolwazi's house. During the journey, Amina and Zuri tried to comfort and encourage Kendi. However, the unknown constantly followed them, and fear grew inside them. When they arrived, Nolwazi greeted them. "I'm glad you came," she said. "We need to start the ritual right away." Nolwazi directed them to a small area behind her house, where the ritual would take place. The area was filled with old exotic plants, magical symbols, and colored sands. Nolwazi explained to Amina, Zuri, and Kendi what they needed to do while preparing the mixtures and tools for the ritual. Nolwazi took Wema's cursed comb in her hand and began to unravel Kendi's hair. As she touched each strand, ancient and mysterious words flowed from Nolwazi's lips. Meanwhile, the sky darkened, the wind picked up, and a mystical atmosphere enveloped them. Suddenly, a dark shadow appeared. Wema had come to stop the ritual with her malevolent spirit. However, with Nolwazi's wisdom and Amina's courage, the ritual continued. Nolwazi's spells and Amina's prayers broke Wema's resistance. As Kendi's hair began to unravel, Wema's terrifying screams were heard. The curse ended with a loud explosion, and Wema's malevolent spirit disappeared. Joy for life sparkled in Kendi's eyes again. Amina and Zuri embraced Kendi, feeling a weight lifted off their shoulders as they headed back to the village. They knew their village was now free, ready to celebrate this victory together. After the ritual at Nolwazi's house, the weight on Zuri, Amina, and Kendi's shoulders was lifted. However, the task was not yet complete. Nolwazi had said that only the first part of the ritual had been completed, and that one final step remained to banish Wema completely. Nolwazi informed them in a calming voice. "Now, the only thing you have to do is completely break the spell on Wema's cursed comb. To do this, you need to braid Kendi's hair one last time with the comb. But this time, for the ritual to be completed correctly, you all need to unite your hearts and minds." Amina and Zuri listened carefully to Nolwazi's instructions, noticing the worry on Kendi's face. Zuri approached Kendi with a warm gaze and said, "Don't worry, Kendi. We are with you. We will complete this final step successfully." After preparing all the necessary materials for the ritual and Wema's cursed comb, Nolwazi led them to the ritual area. The place was decorated with mystical symbols on stones, exotic plants, and colored sand. The air was filled with a faint scent of lavender and sage. As the wind rustled through the trees, a quiet anticipation announced the beginning of the ritual. Nolwazi's deep and wise voice signaled the start of the ritual. "Now, we will unite our hearts and minds. We will banish evil and invite goodness, breaking the curse completely." Amina, Zuri, and Kendi intertwined their hands tightly, following Nolwazi's instructions. As Nolwazi carefully began to braid Kendi's hair with Wema's cursed comb, ancient and powerful words flowed from her lips. In the meantime, Amina and Zuri, holding each other's hands tightly, said their prayers from their hearts. However, halfway through the ritual, the sky suddenly darkened. The wind grew fierce, and the dark presence of Wema appeared again. This time, she was angrier and stronger. Wema's ghostly figure emerged with dark smoke filling the ritual area. Her eyes burned with hatred and rage. Wema's ghost approached Amina, threatening with a terrible smile. "You cannot defeat me. I will curse this village, and you will all be mine." Amina's heart began to pound, but she had to overcome her fear. It was time to resist Wema's curse, rather than submit to it. Amina took a deep breath and locked eyes with Wema, saying, "Your evil cannot break our unity. We will defeat you together." Amina's courageous words inspired Zuri and Kendi. The three tightened their grip on each other's hands and began chanting Nolwazi's magical ritual louder. Nolwazi's ancient words weakened Wema's dark presence as Kendi's hair continued to be braided with the comb. The ritual area filled with intense light. This light enveloped Wema's dark presence. Wema struggled with screams of agony, but this time, the source of pain was the unity and resistance of Amina, Zuri, and Kendi. As Wema's presence weakened, Amina and Zuri couldn't hold back their tears. When Kendi's hair was finally braided for the last time with the cursed comb, Wema's ghostly figure disappeared with a great explosion. The explosion was heard by all the villagers who rushed to Nolwazi's house, filled with fear and curiosity. When they arrived at the ritual area, they saw the moment Wema disappeared. The villagers cheered, celebrating Amina, Zuri, and Kendi's great victory. Everyone embraced, realizing they were free from Wema's curse. Nolwazi took a deep breath and said, "You are now free. Wema's evil spirit can never return. Your village will find peace again." With the great victory achieved, Amina, Zuri, and Kendi returned to the village with hearts full of peace and joy. As their village planned a grand celebration, it was not just a victory, but a triumph of unity and resistance. After Wema's disappearance, the atmosphere in the village changed. The darkness and intensity previously felt had given way to a light sense of peace. The villagers were filled with joy at their great victory and being free from the curse. As Amina, Zuri, and Kendi left Nolwazi's house and returned to the village square, they felt the energy and joy of everyone around them. Soon, the villagers gathered. They welcomed Amina, Zuri, and Kendi as heroes with gratitude and admiration in their eyes. Smiles returned to everyone's faces. Children were running around the square, enjoying the newfound happiness. Bwabwa, one of the village elders, suggested holding a grand celebration. Preparations for the celebration began quickly. Everyone worked together to make decorations, prepare food, and plan a feast for the village. Villagers were bringing fresh fruits, food, and drinks from their homes to set up a grand table in the square. As the celebration began, the rhythm of drums and other musical instruments echoed throughout the village. Men and women performed various dances to celebrate their victory. Amina, Zuri, and Kendi sat in the center of the square, sharing this great joy with all the villagers. They watched as the children beamed with happiness while dancing among the crowd. During the celebration, Zuri stood up to give a remarkable speech, holding the only memento of Wema's destruction, the cursed comb. She said, "Today, we not only broke a curse, but showed how strong our unity and courage are. We stood against Wema's darkness and won. This village became stronger by coming together." The villagers applauded with support. Then Amina stood up, tears in her eyes. "This victory is not just ours, but everyone's. We succeeded because of our trust in each other and our loving hearts. From now on, we must always know that we will stand together, no matter what, and resist evil." Nolwazi also stepped forward to share wise words with the villagers. This experience taught us important lessons. We should always trust our instincts and listen to our inner voices. As long as we stay united, no evil spirit can defeat us. Our village will grow stronger as a close-knit community. Celebrations continued late into the night. Food was shared, songs were sung, and dances were performed. As the villagers enjoyed happy moments, Amina, Zuri, and Kendi realized they had accomplished something significant. Toward the end of the celebrations, Amina quietly left the square. Walking under the night sky, filled with the brilliance of the stars, she reflected on their achievement. When Zuri and Kendi joined her, the three stood together for a moment. This moment reminded them of their strength and that together they could overcome any challenge. The next morning, the air in the village was clearer and brighter. Birds chirped peacefully again, and the villagers returned to their daily work. But this time, there was greater hope and determination in their hearts. The village, freed from Wema's curse, was starting anew. Amina, Zuri, and Kendi bid farewell to Nolwazi with one last heartfelt thank you. Nolwazi saw them off with a wise smile. I am proud of you all, she said, adding, remain brave and united like you are today. The villagers would always remember Amina, Zuri, and Kendi as heroes. Thanks to their courage and determination, everyone in the village could now live in peace. Village life was more hopeful, and everyone relished the joy of being free from Wema. And so, Kibera village, having learned much from the dark times they endured, continued to live in peace, brotherhood, and tranquility.